Bitcoin is trading at $115,000. We had the largest crypto liquidation event in a single day in the crypto history ever. And now we're seeing a bit of a rebound. But what has really happened in the markets? We just had the weekly closes. So I want to dive into some charts and just share with you my thoughts, how I see those and how I interpret that price action. By the way, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Dirk. Subscribe to my channel down below. Follow my page if you haven't done so, because I do these updates here for free pretty regularly. And I have had some really nice calls. For example, I did say that we were going to get some sort of big flush, and eventually we did. It was the largest one in history. So if you'd been following my content, you would have known about that one. It's free. Subscribe down below and smash the like button. Let's get started. So let's start with the weekly charts here. Something I've been warning about for quite a while now is the bearish RSI divergences on the weekly charts. And this is usually a warning that a correction is in, or basically that we could also see a complete trend reversal, which means in this case, potentially the whole cycle top. So we are now at the historic maximum cycle length for Bitcoin, meaning that every previous cycle since the inception of Bitcoin, since 2009, nothing has gone on past right now. We are now at the maximum cycle length. So that is important to understand. We are not early. We are now at the very end of any previous historic cycle. So there's two options. Either this time is not different, the cycle top is in, and we're just about to go down only from here, or this time is different, and then we have to see what are the possibilities here. I'm leaning towards option number one. This time is not different, and the top is in or very, very near. So what we have here, you can see this is the weekly chart of a Bitcoin, and the RSI divergence, for those of you who don't know what it means, it is a standard indicator that you can find on TradingView or any charting platform. It is the relative strength index. You don't need to know how it works. All you need to know is this concept. When the price on the price chart makes a higher high and the RSI does not confirm that, so it does not make a higher high, in fact it makes the opposite, it makes a lower high, that is known as the divergence. There's the opposite between the RSI and the price action. This is a bearish divergence because the price is higher but the RSI is lower. And what this means is that we either, at minimum, get a pullback, or at maximum, we get a complete trend reversal. And this is what we saw in the cycle top in 2021. You can see the price made a higher high in November 2021. The RSI made a lower high, and that was the start of the bear market. Now, what you can get with this is that sometimes you get two highs and sometimes you get three of them. There is no set formula, and that's why trading off the RSI alone is usually not enough. But using it in confluence with other factors, like for example, knowing that we are now at the maximum cycle length, well, that is a warning. So you can see here, this cycle so far, even when we made this higher high back in November of 2024, that was already a bearish RSI divergence. And you can see even then, it did actually already play out. We got the pullback. So remember what I said, with the bearish RSI divergence, you get two things. You either get a pullback to reset the trend and then still continue, or you get a complete trend reversal. So back in 2021, it was a complete trend reversal because it was at the maximum cycle length. In November, we were not yet at the maximum cycle length. Now, however, we are at a point where we are at the complete maximum cycle length. So this point in time right now is the same as this point right here. We have three thrusts here, three highs. Every time the RSI on the weekly has made a lower high. This is a massive bearish RSI divergence. Combine that with the fact that we are at maximum cycle length, and this could very well be the complete cycle top. However, we obviously need confirmation, and confirmation of a bear market or a high time frame bear trend, as we want to see it, is only when we lose the 50-week moving average. So this moving average that I have on the chart here, when we get a weekly close below this one, that is when we get the official confirmation, and then we probably drop another 50% below there. So that level is currently at about $101,000. And that's going to be the line in the sand. The interesting thing here is that we are currently looking at the chart of the Bitcoin spot on Bitstamp, a specific exchange. If you look on perpetual exchanges, I'm about to show you, then you can see the chart looks different because there was a massive liquidation wick in the perpetuals. So if we switch it over to the perpetual chart of Bitcoin on weekly, and this is on Bybit, the Bybit exchange, you can see over here that the chart looks different, whereas what I just showed you, we did not have this wick. On this chart, you can see the wick, and it perfectly retested the 50-week moving average for now. Okay, so I believe that this is going to be retested, and once we get the close below that 50-week moving average in the same way that it happened over here, then we get our bear confirmation and we can start looking for targets, which is usually 50 to 60% below that level, which is probably somewhere there. And how it gets there, you don't know. It can take time. But basically, we're also looking at the 4-year cycle for bear markets. 2014, 2018, 2022, 2026 bear market. It's just around the corner. We're in the middle of October now. You know, whether it takes another week or another 4 weeks, it can chop around a little bit. It can, you know, it can move around a little bit and then start the drop. But I think we're pretty close to the top, if not the top in already here at 126. Now let's take a look at Ethereum, what's been happening here. You can see the same thing stands out. Bearish RSI divergence. Very, very clear over here. This high over here, while it made a higher high, it made a lower high over here. The same thing in the previous cycle. It was the cycle top last cycle. There was bearish RSI divergence, and it was game over. It was the cycle top. We are again at maximum cycle length. This RSI divergence is here on the weekly time frame, and it just looks very, very bad. You can see here we are still holding above this 4,000 level. In fact, we did not close below that, so it's just a wick for now, which means, I guess, there's still some sort of possibility they might scam pump it, right? Maybe they do something like this, they take a little high and then we go down. That is pretty much the only alternative that I see at this point in time, but I think still pretty much it's game over, and maybe we don't even get that. It's really very much going to depend on what happens this week, and of course how the October monthly closes. That's in just over 2 weeks from now. But the bearish RSI divergence sooner or later is going to play out, and it should give us more downside. If we're looking at the total crypto market cap, so that's Bitcoin and all other altcoins combined, it's the same thing here on the weekly chart. You can see it's the same bearish RSI divergence on the weekly, the same one that marked the top in the previous cycle. It made a higher high on the chart, it made a lower high, and that was the top for the 2021 cycle in November of 2021. We are now at the same point in time after the halving, the same maximum cycle length right here. And what do we have? We have a bearish RSI divergence. The RSI is not confirming this. And we got a wick here also back to the 50-week moving average. You can see perfectly here. You can say the same as with Bitcoin. We get the bear confirmation once we close below that 50-week moving average and then drop another 50% or so below it. But by that point, the markets are already a lot lower. So we can still chop around a bit here, right? That's completely possible. We can still move higher, we can move lower, we can chop around here maybe for a few weeks, or maybe we just go straight down. But I do think this is bearish. I do think there's a real chance that the top is now in and that we are starting the bear market. And that confirmation only really comes technically below the 50-week moving average. But like I said, that is quite a bit lower from where we are already. So if you're waiting for that as a trigger to decide if you should sell your holdings or not, well, then that's going to be significantly lower from current levels. I'm not saying you should sell, I'm not saying you should buy, I'm not saying what you should do with your own funds. That is always your decision. It's pretty much different for everyone anyway, because it depends how much do you have invested. If you have like $1,000 invested in the market, who cares? It doesn't matter. If it goes to zero, you lose $1,000. It doesn't matter. What it does matter for, if it's a very significant part of your net worth, if it's 6 figures or 7 figures or 8 figures, and you're in a position where you can't handle a 50% drop in prices from here, and you can't handle holding or watching your whole portfolio drop 70% over the next 2 years if we get a bear market, then that's something you need to address. If you have, $1,000 or $500 in crypto, it doesn't matter. Like, go focus on making more money. That's the key there. But big picture here, this looks bearish. All these RSI divergences, from a technical perspective, from the charts, are not bullish. Combine it with the maximum cycle length, and that's a good confluence that the top is probably in or very, very close. The good news is, if you know how to trade and you are well positioned, if you've taken your initial out of your spot portfolio, or maybe even you've taken profits, if you got in early in 2023, you would be up pretty big can take in your initial, you can take in your profits, and then you can focus on trading. And there's a lot of money to be made trading the market in the bear market, especially with the volatility. There's huge money to be made to the downside, shorting these markets. And if you want to learn how to do that, I have a free course called Leverage Hero. The link is in the description down below. It'll teach you all this stuff, market structure, how to trade, how to short, how to long, with spot, with leverage. It's all there and it's free. Go check it out if you haven't done so. The link is in the description down below. Smash the like button. I'll see you in the next video.